Welcome to the COVID-19 interview series, and today I'm really delighted to be joined by Stephen Foster and Shereen George from BNP Paribas. And for those of you who don't know, BNP Paribas is one of the largest banks in the world. So, it's great to have your insights, and I'm sure you've been incredibly busy. So let's just sort of move into some immediate questions here. And Stephen, I'm going to ask you first. It's been a sort of really busy few weeks. What has this all meant by way of changes that you've had to make within your organisation, and indeed the challenges that you have faced?
Well, hi, Justine. Thanks for that. It actually has come upon us incredibly quickly. This certainly hit the UK and the world really, really quickly. So we've had to move really fast. The biggest issue, given that we've got our main location in central London, is getting people out of the building. We've been told by the government we have to work from home if we can. We have the capability to do that. So we've been making sure people get laptops, get access to the network, and just are able really to try and carry on their normal day jobs without interruption. It's been a challenge, first in London for my own compliance team, in as much as the network has been stretched to great lengths. When you do disaster recovery tests, you often don't try and put 4,000 people working from home. You only do a small number, and that's been a real challenge for the bank, but we've passed it successfully. And then specifically for the business, we have two massive trading floors. We can't have everybody sitting on those spreading germs. So we've had to do certainly to start off with, we had to do a process of half a team in 1 week, half a team in the second week, not meeting in between. So if anybody got ill, at least somebody could carry on doing the essential trading and support for the market that we do. But pretty much since government told us to work from home, we've had most people having to do that. We've got to make sure access to sensitive systems is restricted. We've got to make sure that people with their family needs are balanced, because there are some colleagues who have got children at home or old relatives at home, and they haven't got anyone to look after them. So that's a real challenge, and we've got to be sympathetic for that. And then there's people who have been ill, so we have to cover for those. And of course, actually, because we do a lot of agile working already, we have to think about health and safety issues, because if you're working from home, you still need to be cautious of that.
Thank you. And Shereen, can I ask you, what has this meant from the customer point of view? How within compliance have you been looking to support your customers to continue business? Because they're obviously facing the same challenges that we're also facing.
Absolutely. And morning, Justine. Obviously, I think as Stephen said, it's an absolutely unprecedented event, and we've had to react quickly. I think one of the key things for clients is the access to liquidity quickly to try and, so that they can continue to operate. So what we've been trying to do is, where we are aware that clients have critical payments, we are trying to support them to ensure that these are prioritised, and we work across all of our clients to make sure that these payments can be processed. Given the global nature of the bank, as Stephen said, that's been a challenge, because we have operations globally, and it's making sure that staff that are usually working in those locations are now working from home, can still operate. So that has been a challenge with the IT, as well as ensuring that clients are still having access to liquidity. At the same time, we recognise that there is a new norm now. The patterns that our clients previously, the type of business that they were doing, it now looks very, very different. So we're trying to come up with innovative solutions for our clients to help them so they can continue to have access to liquidity. And the types of, the types of payment flows are changing. So that, all of that though, in total, whilst it's an absolutely critical situation, we've got to maintain the robustness of our compliance. So that's sort of the tension between the two, ensuring our clients have access to liquidity and payments, but at the same time maintaining the robustness of our compliance program as well.
Great, thank you. And maybe I can turn back to Stephen and ask another sort of perspective on the customer perspective and thinking about fraud. There's a lot of COVID-19 fraud concerns out there. What are you being alerted to, and how are you supporting both your own organisation and your customers in responding to those concerns?
It's a very, very good question, actually. A lot of the fraud threats that were out there already will continue. I think they have become much more relevant and scary because of COVID-19. But the idea of push payment fraud, email takeover, CEO fraud, so forcing customers to make payments to bank accounts which are clearly fraudulent. For corporations, those are here already and they will continue. The issue, I think, is people are so nervous about COVID from a personal level, but also a corporate level, and they're looking for support from the government, that they are reacting without thinking, perhaps, as much as they should do to emails allegedly from HMRC or the government offering them loans and funding, or from their banks or whatever. There is very good guidance on the FCA and the National Crime Agency websites and the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau. So anybody should really go there and look at those recommendations, because although, as I say, a lot of them are routine, you should be aware of them anyway, this particular scenario leaves you much, much more open to the criminals taking advantage of your fear to steal money from you or whatever. So it's you've got to be really, really cautious.
So the risk is really heightened. And Shereen, back to you. I mean, we spend a lot of time discussing sanctions. What does sanctions compliance look like at the moment for you? How are you managing that landscape?
I would say that the pandemic's definitely intensified the demand. Obviously, we can see for medicines and medical supplies, certainly in jurisdictions that are challenging for us as a bank and generally to deal with. We're seeing, obviously, new types of demand, changing trade finance patterns, and certainly as a bank, we want to support the humanitarian drives. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the complexity of sanctions and the environment which we operate. So we're very mindful of both aspects, ensuring we are compliant as well with both the external sanctions drivers, but the bank's policy as well. So absolutely, we're trying to support that. But it's the tension between sort of the two within that. It's going to be a challenge for us to ensure we can support. But as I said, our sort of systems and controls, as well as our sort of monitoring systems in the background, are capable of dealing with these changes and picking these up as well. And that's another challenge that we're working alongside at the moment.
So, I mean, and the sanction side is something that we're going to continue through this series around how to manage that humanitarian aspect. So I think the needs are going to become even more and more complex over the next few months as we see the increase in very high-risk countries of new COVID-19 cases and the international response. Can we just sort of, in the last minute or so, can we just think about, we are going through an unprecedented period at the moment, which is challenging everybody from business across the world and indeed just society. When this is over, and we obviously do know it is at some point going to be over, when it is over, what do you think will be the lessons that will be taken away from the experience of this? Will things change, or will disaster recovery systems look the same as they did before the pandemic?
That's a great question. I would absolutely say that this has been, because it's so extraordinary, it's been, obviously we've had to react to things I think we never could have realistically envisaged would happen. So we are absolutely going to have to see what worked well, what didn't, what do we need to change, and are there aspects really that, as part of our analysis of the sort of key areas that we needed to focus on during the crisis, are there areas we need to almost go back on and look at that we need to reinforce or consider maybe as part of the COVID response were put to one side slightly? So I think that's really going to be important for banks and anyone within the crisis to understand what happened and what went well, because this could feasibly happen again. And I think that's really made everyone aware of, this is, something that could happen again, and how we need to respond if it does.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that, Justine, if I may, very quickly, Shereen's absolutely right. Disaster recovery testing will change from now on. The other thing to remember, with particularly the regulatory obligations on firms in the UK, is your outsourced capability. Are you actually on top of this such that when something goes wrong, you're able to be comfortable and be in touch with them to get that outsourced capability? We've got a big competency centre in Lisbon where we run all our payment processing and sanctions filtering. they were ready. They had to rush hard, but they were ready to keep the flows going, and that was critical.
Sure. So thank you so much. I know I've made you rush through many issues in a very short spell, but it's been really lovely to see you both. I am missing colleagues, and it is great to talk to you, and we will continue this conversation. So Steve and Shereen, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks,
Justine. Thanks for the opportunity.